Hi, guys, and welcome to the Focus on Gaming podcast, episode 109. Can you believe it? We're well into the hundreds already. Today, we'll be interviewing Grant Sinclair. The Sinclair name is legendary in the UK, especially those that grew up in the 80s. The name is synonymous with innovation, pushing the boundaries, and the very birth of home computing and the British games industry. Sir Clive Sinclair, the inventor of the ZX Spectrum, wasn't just a computer. It sparked and ignited the careers of countless programmers and designers, creating a revolution from the bedrooms of many a coder. And
It was the best.
We're Amstrad and Sinclair fans, so it's like there's a bit of a battle that goes on our podcast. So we are very, very pleased to be interviewing a wonderful guest today by the name of Grant Sinclair, who is an inventor, designer, and nephew of Sir Clive Sinclair. Following in the family footsteps, Grant has forged his own path, creating remarkable products that are both futuristic, functional, from eye-catching Iris eTrike and the reimagining of the personal transport, and the most recent Gamercard, which is on its way to market now, which is a credit card-sized handheld gaming device. Grant is continuing to challenge convention, and we're going to talk to him about growing up in a whirlwind of the Sinclair empire, his own journey as an inventor, and the inspiration behind his creations. Grant, welcome to the podcast. Nice to have you on.
Hi there. Good to be here.
Yeah.
Welcome.
How you doing?
Yeah, not bad at all.
We've got many questions for you. And that, guys, just so you know that Martin isn't here today. We have a running joke, Grant, that each week Martin's not here, Martin dies, and then he's
magically
comes back to life the next week. So but Duncan is here today. How you doing, Duncan?
I'm all good. Excited because obviously the Spectrum was the king of the home computers.
I'm being nice today. So shall we get on with some questions?
Yeah.
Duncan, do you want to go first?
Oh, you want me to go first?
Yeah,
I can as well. Hang on. I've got so busy on getting everything else ready. But so we're going to go straight with the Gamercard, I think, because it is... I think it says on your website that it's the size of a retail gift card, but the design of it, I'll put it up on so people can see it on the YouTube channel. It literally has the little slot at the top, so people can pick one off the shelf, as it is. Is that actually what it's for? So people can literally go up and take one off the shelf, or was there another design reason for the little slot?
The original idea and the main idea is that because I spent sort of a lot of my childhood bunking off school and sort of hanging out in news agents and reading magazines, and so I'm always in magazine shops, reading every kind of magazine I can get my hands on, and that was my education really, and so then later on, and so wherever I've lived on a weekend or whatever, I always will head over to Dwight Smith's or anywhere else I can find and just browse magazines. But I started to notice these little gift cards appearing.
So for Xbox, etc.
Yeah, PlayStation, Xbox, and normally they're in prime location. And I particularly noticed that at lockdown, I started looking into sort of how big the market is for these things, and I didn't realize, but they sort of sell in billions of units. And I think I'd had the idea vaguely before, but earlier on, but I just thought, well, God, if you could basically shoehorn a computer into, in fact, you can see where I've actually drawn on some gaming circles on this. So this must have been an early sort
plastic prototype.
Card prototype, yeah.
Yeah.
And in fact, the original one I did was on a black Pizza Express one I bought.
I
And
like it.
yeah, so I thought if you could squeeze a whole computer into that somehow,
Mm.
it could make it available to everyone. And at the beginning, I was thinking you could do it, do a low cost one, and then I started to look at the market for, and I sort of lot of cheap Chinese, mainly sort of Chinese, really low end sort of handhelds.
Yeah.
Often have lots of copied games on, so they're not even original games. Sometimes they're like reproductions.
Yeah, there's 1,000 games, but about
Yeah.
700 of them are Super Mario Brothers level 1.
Yeah, exactly. And I didn't want to be, so I thought, well, it'd be better to. I sort of wanted to. I thought, well, we better because that market's already covered. Really, I thought maybe going with something a bit more dynamic. And I'd already been working on a product that got the Raspberry Pi in it, and at first I wasn't going to use a Raspberry Pi on this product. I was looking at other different types of chipsets, but the Raspberry Pi to me was the easiest way I could bundle it with some games. Manage to put some sort of interface for the user to get around very easily. And there'd obviously be access to a lot more games if people wanted to through emulation, and also there's endless other games available for the Raspberry Pi, because Linux, and opens up a massive market of massive treasure trove. I mean, if you're into chess or whatever you're into. And then I was looking at lots of different types of displays, every kind you could possibly imagine, and to get into that really thin footprint of a gift card.
80 thickness 6.5 millimeters it is.
Yeah, the Gamercard.
That is pretty thin.
Yeah. So what I wanted to do is separate the product from the sort of Chinese low-end products, and I wanted to go for a really premium product. And I was aware you get sort of high-quality IPS screens. The screen in this is actually sort of the same sort of pixel density as a MacBook Pro, an Apple MacBook Pro.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, or you get on a really high-end Android phone like an Samsung S25 Ultra or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not as high. Hasn't got but it's got the same roughly the same PPI. So it pops. It really pops. And so and for a long time, well, not a long time, a couple of years earlier, I'd already got another handheld in development, which was a landscape product actually, and so I came up with the idea of making a gaming console that didn't need a body casing. So and I was working on the development on this in lockdown, and so I'd come up with the idea of doing a stack of printed circuit boards. So you've got a stack of printed circuit boards with various cutouts inside for all the components, and you could just stack them together, and you could end up making that's how the idea started anyway. So you could make a very thin enclosure without having a big plastic bulky casing around it.
Yeah.
And then there's all sorts of other issues I had to engineer, but I did because I've got that background of being in a family of doing sort of electronics miniaturization, I knew a lot about where to get the smallest speakers, where to get the smallest amplifiers.
Yeah.
So I knew quite a lot about design because I did work for Clive, so I was on the Spectrum stands. I wrote one of the very first Spectrum games that was used at a public event.
I read that.
It was a rubbish little game. It was just a little sort of, and I didn't even. It was my idea, so I got my mates to write it.
Yeah.
And it was just a little fortune teller game. It was but it was used as a fate, and it had crowds of people around it, and it was like a little. It was the issue on Spectrum, and there weren't any games available for it, so we didn't have any choice but to just hack together something.
Yeah.
And crowds of people, and they're all handing over this money for it to have a go on this little tiny little computer.
And how old were you then?
I was 10. I was 10 when I got the Spectrum Clive, a really early one.
Yeah.
And because I remember taking it apart loads, and I broke the ribbon connectors inside, and I was really sort of I didn't want to tell anyone about it. And eventually I told my mother, and she phoned up the Sinclair lab, the Sinclair office, and they said, "I'll bring it in." And that's when I went into the Sinclair lab I mean, I've gone to the Sinclair HQ when I was much younger, but it's in a different location.
Yeah.
And this is when I went in and saw they had a Spectrum wired up to it. They had a breadboard joystick interface,
Okay.
and I was able to use a Spectrum with a Atari joystick, move a little sprite around the screen, and that was just like, oh my god, that was
Amazing.
But they were like, and it was, I mean, this was on a real shoestring kind of, it was like a tiny little office with people packed in it. There was at least, I remember there being 2 engineers in there, but the office was only big enough for 4 people, And I remember there being a sort of radiation warning or electric shock warning symbol on the door. And then, but I was absolutely sworn to secrecy. And then when I went back home, because my dad's a designer, so he did a lot of the early designs for Clive. Before, this is in the 60s and 70s, before sort of computers came about.
Yeah.
And my dad in the 80s was doing, he did the styling for a lot of gaming computers, mainly sort of chess computers and dedicated game computers. And so I grew up in that world of, my dad would do a sketch in an evening, do a sketch in an hour, or maybe he'd spend a day doing sketching. Then it'd get drawn up on a computer, really early computer that did it all wireframe, and then make a model, and that model would cost, that'd be the expensive bit. It cost thousands and thousands to make these beautiful models, and they just looked so visually striking. And then they'd have to put the graphics on, and they'd have to put the graphics on by hand, and my dad hated doing that. And that's sort of how I got roped in later on, because I used to do it on the Mac, and but so I was around when all these products are being developed, and
But the innovation was so vast, wasn't it? For a short period of time, it just exploded.
well,
Computing.
it was. I mean, it wasn't just computing, because it goes back further than that. I mean, you mentioned Amstrad, and so in the 60s, Clive did hi-fi and little kit radios, kit electronics. So if you wanted to build your own little amplifier, you buy a Sinclair kit for I don't know, 20 pence or whatever it was, and it would come in a box of bits, and you sold them together. One of Clive's first customers was Alan Sugar. He would turn up in the late 60s or mid 60s, 66 I think, and he would, in a little white van, and he'd buy up all the reject, because Sinclair had, the really early Sinclair sort of had quite severe reliability issues, because a lot of it was sold as kits, and people didn't have any expertise, but they'd mess up the soldering, they'd send them back. So Sinclair had a whole unit, just piles of stuff that they had technicians trying to work through to repair. And and Alan Sugar would come and buy up all the ones on a Friday. He'd take them and he'd get them repaired. He'd repair them, and then he'd like match them to a record deck, a couple of speakers, and he'd sell them on a market stall.
Yeah.
And that was how he got going in hi-fi, because Chris Curry, who used to work for Clive, who later started Acorn, he broke away and did Acorn, and went on to be ARM and everything like that. He actually taught Chris Curry how to build taught Alan Sugar how to build a hi-fi.
Wow.
And then Alan Sugar exploded with hi-fi. So at one time, in the 70s, Sinclair and Amstrad going neck to neck. You walk down Tottenham Road in London, in the windows they'd have both in there.
They would.
And that rivalry. So
Carried on
when
eventually, didn't Alan?
Sorry.
Alan bought the name in the end, didn't he?
Yeah. Well, what actually happened, and in fact, what you read in the press was never conveyed properly, because so Clive had something like 70% of the UK computer market, maybe even higher. And so he had 3 of the best-selling computers in the world in succession. Had definitely shipped more computers than anyone else throughout the early 80s, mid 80s, and suddenly got to the Spectrum. Everybody who could afford a computer had got a computer, whether it was a Spectrum, whether it was a ZX81, or whether it was a Commodore, or whether it was Atari, or whatever. And so it's phenomenal success. I mean, they just couldn't make enough of these things. But and all the retailers like Smiths, Dwight Smiths, Dixons, they all assumed that the next Christmas, the parents, after buying their kid a Spectrum, which was a lot of I mean, that was a really low cost machine, but it's still a lot of money for people in those days.
Yeah,
Assume they'd
definitely.
go back and buy, the next one or something else. In fact, it didn't, because the market becomes saturated. Everybody who could afford one had one, and so
Yeah.
they didn't. Their parents were like, "No, I'm not going to get you that," unless apart from sort of the wealthier kids, got stuff, or the wealthier people.
Mm.
And so suddenly there was this Acorn and Sinclair, who were two main rivals. They found that the retailers were. This is a story I heard: is the retailers were paying late, and they weren't able to pay their bills, and it was running into all sorts of issues. And Amstrad, had been doing really well with his, got a screen, got a printer, and
The all-in one.
and put it all together for 400 quid, which is
Mm.
pretty genius, really, to come up with that. But he learned everything about sort of hard sell mail order advertising with Clive, because that was
Mm.
Clive saying. Clive had actually designed the ads. He would say, write a little copy, and he would get an illustrator, draw it out back in the early days. But so Amstrad happened to be doing really well, because he suddenly broke into this, everybody suddenly wanted a word processor, and
Yeah.
so he had sitting on a cash mountain, and Clive, Timex approached him. Timex were building the computers at the time. Samsung were also building Spectrums, but Timex were the main one. And Timex offered to buy Clive out. Clive backed out of it last minute, and then and Alan Sugar. What happened was Alan Sugar heard Sinclair running into some issues, and he made a model. He got one of his. This is in the Amstrad book, so if our story is not 100% accurate, it's in the book. It's worth reading, Alan Sugar's book. But
I've read
basically,
it.
he got a model. He got a model of what he thought the next Spectrum should be. So it was a Spectrum with a better keyboard on it, and I think a tape machine built in. And he pre-sold that to the distributors and the retailers, got an advance order, and then he knew it'd be worth trying to buy Sinclair. And what he actually did was paid. It was in the press that he paid 5 million for the name. In fact, what happened was he paid 5 million for the rights to the Spectrum, and 4 million for the name. That's what Clive told me. Or it might have been the other way around, but Clive suddenly got 9 million quid, which is equivalent to sort of about 20 million quid now.
Yeah.
So Clive got a really good deal out of it, and actually Clive thought Alan Sugar would do a pretty good job with it, because he knew the market so well,
Yeah.
and so yeah.
was his he obviously invented lots of different things. Was computing sort of a major interest of his? And how about for you? Is gaming a big part of what you want to invent, or is it just the delight of the technology that excites you?
Interesting. Well, with Clive, I know he was doing a lot of the computer development to fund what he wanted to do. His goal was to do the electric vehicle, and to get that in the hands of everybody, an affordable car is basically what he's trying to do. And he had a very good crack at it. I mean, the C5, although everyone says it's a failure, and it was by Clive's terms, but it was still the best-selling electric vehicle
It's
of all
become
time.
a national treasure almost now, hasn't it?
Yeah,
It's a joy to use.
it's good. Yeah.
Yeah. My brother-in-law had one for a period of time, and it was great fun to use. And until you take it on very, very bumpy, unmade road, didn't work.
Yeah.
But obviously, you've done your own version of the C5, which
Yeah.
looks phenomenal.
Yeah.
Can you tell us more about that and where that came
Yeah.
from?
Sure. Yeah. So the idea came about, I think, because I was involved in the development of the C5. So I had the prototype at my house. My dad did some of the very early styling of it, and then so I, as a kid, had to drive this thing around. I loved it. I mean, it was amazing, and it was like something had been built in someone's garage, and it was it was a very, very crude prototype, but it could go about 30 miles an hour. I remember being very fast, the original idea.
It was. Yeah.
And then one of his engineers said, why don't you limit it to 15 miles an hour? Because there's a new legislation that means if you limit it and you classify it as a bike, so you have pedals and stuff.
Yeah.
You don't need to have insurance or tax, and anyone over 14 can use it. So Clive suddenly thought that fits my market, because a lot of his markets were 14-year-olds and that sort of age group.
Mm.
But the thing about C5 is everyone, it was the best-selling electric vehicle until the Nissan Leaf took over in about fairly recently. I mean, about 10 years ago.
Yeah, it was that recent. Yeah.
And and it fell through. But the way I got into it, so I knew about how it was pretty hairy driving the C5 on a busy road. We got lorries and stuff. And I used to tear about in them when I was a kid, well, before I was 14 as well, and driving through colleges and stuff, all sorts of mad stuff. So I knew about the issues with it, and I was aware that somebody gave me a little remote control helicopter at a party, a sort of, is it a Chinook with two propellers?
Oh yeah, yeah.
And I was flying it as high up in the air as I could, and it was like, and then it would suddenly lose range, and it would start falling down, and I'd try and regain it. And we were having this barbecue outside, and everybody thought it was absolutely hilarious for some reason. But after a while, the higher I got it, the better I got at doing it, it would just come crashing down, and you couldn't recover it. And it eventually broke, but after about, we were doing it was a lot of fun, and it was made out of foam, but painted foam, and I thought, God, that's pretty high quality, that body. And it's ultra lightweight, and inside it got a beautiful little battery and a little tiny motor. I thought, God, that'd be the way to make an enclosed vehicle, and an enclosed bike. And at the time, I was living in Bristol, and there'd been I used to cycle along the Bristol to Bath cycle path each day, because we lived in a part of Bristol which meant you had to go down the cycle path. And coming back late at night, or even in the day, sometimes late at night especially, really intimidating sometimes, because you're like trapped. There's nowhere to go, So,
Yeah.
And then there was loads of attacks with people with baseball batting people on bikes, and so people stopped using the cycle path for a while, and they were just terrified. And it happened to a few people we knew got beaten up by these baseball batters, until the police finally managed to stop it. But and I thought, well, I thought safety angle, if you could have something which is high up, so it's high on up off the road, so you don't feel intimidated, much faster, because I knew about the fastest bikes in the world, because my sister had her boyfriend was a designer and had the fastest bike in Europe.
Okay.
Wow.
And so I thought if you could do a streamlined one, higher up off the ground, all latest technology, you might have a chance of it being a success. I did a prototype, designed it, spent a few years doing it, got it on BBC TV, about 10 million people saw it. Even though the motor and the battery and everything just arrived the night before filming. And it exploded from there. And that product, we've got a factory in Europe getting ready to make them. So yeah, it's exciting.
Wow.
But the Gamercard thing has been very well received, and I'm still not exactly sure why. I mean, I think obviously it's my design, so I love the design, but I haven't had time to ask people, get any feedback about what why they like it so much.
I think design-wise, it's unique, and also, like you mentioned, you go to any of the supermarkets, the gift cards are next to tills, they're on end of shelves. It's all very much eyeline, and I think that if these things are going to go with it, it's something that is limitless, especially if it's hackable and emulation is possible on it. I mean, that's what people want, something you can fit in your pocket and just pop out and play, and yeah, I think it's exciting.
It's expandable as well, so it comes with some games pre-installed. And as you said, it's a Raspberry Pi, so you can have RetroPie and other such things on it. And if you have the ROMs, you can play pretty much what kind of platform would it play up to? Do you think? Is it sort of a 16-bit?
Generation 5, which is, I think that's PS1.
Oh,
Yeah.
play PS. Excellent.
Yeah, but I mean, that's a good gauge of how powerful the chip is. I mean, what we put in ours is in Gamercard, it's got a heat sink in it, and it's got a clever heat sinking tech in it. So
Mm.
you can overclock it if you want, although you get other issues if you do that with potentially reliability and stuff. But you can. I mean, that's the thing about the Gamercard. I didn't want it to be something which is just mindless thing. I didn't want to copy the thing where it comes with a certain amount of games, and that's the games you get with it. I never liked. It was like that U2 thing where they did with Apple, where
Oh
they
god,
gave,
they gave everybody the album, didn't
yeah,
they? And
I know,
nobody
and they might
actually
not like
wanted it.
I know, and I always thought that it's always annoyed me when I bought an Xbox for my son a few years ago, and it was like a Xbox Series S, I think, the white one, the first white one,
Yeah.
and that came all branded as Minecraft on the packaging and everything, and it's like, yeah, it's. I mean, it's fine if that's the thing that everyone's into at the time, but I particularly wanted my product to be different from the others. So a bit like the Spectrum, where you might buy a game with it, you might get a couple of games, you might buy a couple of games, and you might discover more games. Yeah, but what it did is inspire people to actually create their own games. The Spectrum,
Yeah.
and because the hardware was actually fairly limited on the Spectrum, it really it brought out a huge amount of creativity.
It certainly did, and
Yeah,
it changed the industry completely.
it did.
So
And
Yeah.
that it's also compatible with the Pico 8 game.
Yeah. I'll I can actually show you.
Oh, the Pico 8, I've really looked into it myself much, but it's basically a way that people can quite easily create quite simple games, isn't it? I think.
Yeah, and the square screen format is because you can't really see because my camera's not that great.
Oh yes, yeah, I can see it. Oh wow, that's a lot of games.
Yeah, thousands, literally thousands. And what's good about this is people can create games and say a school lesson. Um, you know, you can actually build a game really quickly for it, and so and there's also other ways to create games on for Raspberry Pi. You can use Python, all sorts of things, different programming language, whatever you're into, and so I wanted to make it much more of an open machine.
yeah,
So
I think you'll be finding a lot of people will be branding these up themselves as a Spectrum handheld. But it's interesting, actually. You mentioned about some of the kits that your uncle sold back in the day, and one of my favourites, as I am a complete retro geek when it comes to all things technology, as Duncan will know, was the Black Watch kit.
yeah. Oh,
And now, for
Oh,
me,
that sounds ominous.
yeah, I mean, I would love you to do a modern day version of that. But what are do you have any memories of that? Have you
Oh yeah.
got any thoughts on that product?
Yeah. Well, I remember going. So I was about 6, I think.
Mm.
That's when I tried it. So I went to the Sinclair Radionics HQ, and I was left there. So my mum left me there, and I remember
With the
Clive.
radiation.
Well, this is in different premises, but Clive was. I remember seeing Clive and him being really stressed out. It was right at the end of the sort of before the whole Sinclair Radionics thing folded, and the reason why it folded primarily, in part, was the sort of calculators come to the end of their thing, and the Black Watch was what Clive would gamble everything on the next product. That's what made him get excited about stuff. That's what he was into. He just he would put everything. And he'd take like double page ads on certain products and the color supplements. With the Spectrum, that's he didn't just do double page color ads in all the color supplements. He did sort of every cornflakes box had he did all that advertising as well. I mean,
Yeah.
he spent something like £1 million on advertising in just a year.
Wow.
And I read that when Apple launched their first PowerBook, they had a much lesser budget than what Clive, blew. And with the Black Watch, it was the same. I mean, that was going to be the next thing. They got loads of orders, but they had a problem which scuppers a lot of businesses, where they just got the chip, the first chip they used was just The supplier just decided not to supply them anymore. Didn't have any explanation at all. Just
Wow.
that was it. So Clive would have got around that very quickly because he would have got that. And they nailed another chip fairly. They sourced another chip and redid it for the chip. But they discovered a terrible problem with that, and it was completely overlooked. And I have no idea why. But if you go near static electricity, the watch would just completely reset. So it would go to zero, and the other. So that's what the second issue, and the third sort of final nail in the coffin was that the kit version was almost impossible to build. I mean, you could do it. You spent a month building it, but it was, unless you're building them all day long, all day, every day, you don't know how to do it. And so they had a lot of problems with that. And yeah, it was sad, really, because they could have absolutely cleaned up with it. But, Clive was no one to sort of dwell in.
So I'm just looking it up. So it was a watch that came separate, and you had to build it.
It was the black watch was a kit, yeah, and well, it's a kit, or you've got it pre-assembled as well. But some of the technology that was in that, I mean, that was like 1975, I think, yeah. So it was 3, and it was they got flex PCBs in that, so he was using flexible PCBs in that, which.
Wow.
You don't get flexible PCBs in mainstream. I mean, you do in some sort of smartwatches, fitness trackers, for instance, maybe. But some of the stuff he was doing, and
way ahead.
Way ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm interested to know, what was your, if you're willing to share this, of course, what was your first ever idea of something to invent? And it may be something you never actually did, but what was your first ever idea as maybe a kid or a teenager or a young adult that you thought that would be amazing and got really excited about inventing?
I can't remember the first one I got excited about, but I remember my granddad used to always encourage inventing, and so they used to sort of sit around the table, and well, I remember distinctly because I used to go and be left sort of stay with my grandparents in London, and he would walk out and say, "What have you invented? What have you invented?" And I was only like sort of 5 or 6 year old kid, and I remember thinking next time I see him, I better have a decent answer for that because I was a bit sort of, and I'd seen on TV, the machine guns and stuff, and I'd seen silencers, and so next time I said, I'd really like to know whether you could silence a machine gun. And it wasn't an invention or anything, but I remember him being really blown away by that a 7-year-old kid asked that question. But in terms of inventing, I really don't remember. All sorts of ideas. Oh, I do know actually. Yeah, I remember coming up with an idea for having a car sun visor, an aftermarket one you buy in Halfords or whatever, but it's got gadgets inside it. So. Whatever the gadgets are, makeup or flashlight, torch, gizmos, whatever. And
so, what about if there was no limit to money and you had all the engineers and whatnot? What is there something that you dream of inventing?
Well, I don't think the money is a limiting factor because part of what drives doing a lot of this stuff is to try. I mean, a lot of the development of this, part of the reason why it ended up like this is because it was done on an absolute shoestring. And like CAD engineers that I normally work with were in lockdown, and so you couldn't phone them up and go, "Do you mind if I'll send you over this sketch? Do you mind if you draw it up? And by the way, I need it in a couple of days." No,
but they loved you.
So it really was back to the drawing board with lockdown because it was back to sketching on paper and getting model, balsa wood and mocking it up like that. And that was how this design came about. It was a design I didn't need to put into 3D. I mean, I did actually put it into 3D later, but I did all the concept. I just sketched it and then drew it all up myself on the computer. It was that easy and laid out where everything was. But I mean, partly got a lot of experience of doing electronics, but so the money, having endless amounts of money, wouldn't necessarily help the
Or time.
or time. Yeah, it definitely helped time. But the trouble is, if you've got endless amounts of money, you can end up inventing a lot of stuff which is a bit wasteful. Because the thing with inventing, you often find a better way of doing it quite quickly. My dad's very good at doing that. So by the time he used to call it mousetrap syndrome, because by the time you come up with an idea, you get it to market, suddenly go, I've got a better way of doing that. But what I made sure with this product is, when it's right, and when I drew this up, it just looks right straight away on paper.
Yeah.
And when I made up the prototypes, it looked right and it worked right, and it took a bit of time to get right, because it did take money. Obviously, to get to this took quite a bit of money to get going. You got a tool, you got all these different things you got to be involved with. You got to pay tracking artists to do the PCB layout and stuff to your design, and it's not cheap, and it takes time. And yeah, so in those certain aspects, like it would help a bit with money actually. So yeah, contradicting myself there a bit, but but yeah, the point I'm making is, if you haven't got the luxury of having endless amounts of money,
you can still invent.
You can keep going until it's got to a stage where that's good enough, and you're not really going to get much further with it. And I felt I got that with this. I mean, it does turn out now, since I've got this ready to ship, I'm already gathering everything from the next generation version, which won't replace this; it will complement this. It's a different version.
So on the front, he's got two circular. They are 8-direction sort of D-pad kind of thing, but circular.
Well,
I think we could hear them on the video because they're quite clicky.
Yeah. Well, I think that's what's confused a lot of people. Is I think some people think they're just sort of like
they're like analog trackpads,
or
but they're not.
Trackpads, but you slide your finger, but they're not. That's actually a layer of silicon, so you get that lovely silk feel, really tactile, and underneath it's got a snap dome on, so you've got 4 on each side.
Yeah.
And then on the back you've got this one hasn't got.
You've got little circular pads, haven't you? The LNR pads.
Yeah. And actually, not a single person has actually worked out what those are for. So I think we're going to have to put LNR on them, print them on. Look at it's a very easy tweak to production.
And I'm assuming you can sync a wireless controller to it as well, should you need to, or want to even.
Through Bluetooth, or you can plug it's got USB-C, so it's basically got a USB-C hub built in.
Yeah.
And so you can plug stuff into it and it hooks up.
Yeah, I think it's nice in its form though, rather than adding Bluetooth controllers and stuff on.
It is. And I wanted it to be something you could grab and take on a flight. You've got a few games maybe. We're going to keep adding to that, so we want to have a decent amount of games on it.
Yeah, definitely.
I've been contacted by quite a few games developers, but I'm looking for as many game developers as possible to create some convert existing ones, port existing games, or else to create some new games for it, because it's a really good. And Square, although it's quite the Square screen, although it's quite an unusual format and it's very high quality, actually works brilliantly for playing all sorts of different types of games. And it occurred to me, board games are always Square, so chess but I mean it does work brilliantly for certain games.
Yeah, I mean it has got Tom saying about using a controller. It has got HDMI out. Is it micro HDMI or mini HDMI?
Mini HDMI, yeah.
Mini HDMI, that's the one, and USB-C. So you can. I did look up the Quick system. That's like so you can expand it with various boards and such like, can't you? For everything from maybe a thermometer to a extra joystick ports.
Well, I noticed that especially in schools. So some schools they get big budgets, and I had no idea how big budgets. But some schools will have a budget of like 10,000 quid to buy a creative equipment, computer equipment, whatever, educational equipment, IT equipment that they'll use for a month or longer for various projects, and then once that month's over, they'll then get pushed to the right school, and then once that month it will get pushed around. And I noticed that a lot of those schools are buying sort of Arduinos and Raspberry Pis, and they'll get a class and they'll use them to make one thing, whatever it is, a bird cam or a cockroach LED diode or whatever, whatever. And they'd be soldered up, and that'd be it. They'd be stuffed in a drawer and never used again. And that doesn't really work for the crate system. And I thought, well, how about if you shoehorn the Raspberry Pi into a gift card shape, and then you add to get round, because on the original sort of drawings, the original mock-ups, I had connectors on it that I thought would be much neater to stop people from soldering onto it. Because if you look very carefully, you can see the tracks of the PCB on there.
Yeah, I can see them.
Yeah. Stop people soldering onto it. You have a quick connector, which allows you can have a breadboard there and have wires going all over the place and do whatever the hell you like with it. And when that project is finished, you can discard the project or do something else with it. And then, when you pass around to the next school, you can plug something else in.
Yeah,
still start fresh. Yeah. So that's
still got your Gamercard in one piece.
Yeah. Well, that's the idea anyway.
I think it's a great idea. Brings me back to the old BBC Micro days where you would you'd be doing coding on them back in primary school time, and then you'd all stay after school to see if you could finish off programming the game or moving the. Remember the turtles? Anyone remember that?
Yeah, I do. Yeah,
program. Yeah. So, great times. I've been looking on eBay to try and find one of those actually, but
they used to have a hole that you put a pen in, didn't they?
That's it. Yeah. We used to draw. Yeah. Okay, so going back to the Spectrum brand, just because I'm intrigued with all these sort of things, so I just can't help myself. Does your family still own the Spectrum brand, or is it still with Amstrad, or is it something you would even be interested in exploring yourself to look at bringing out something if you could acquire the name, reclaiming your heritage?
So it was sold to Amstrad, bought it for the rights of Spectrum and the name for £9 million, and then he sold it to Sky. So I think Sky still own it. I'm not at all interested in. It's an interesting question because it's obviously crossed my mind several times, but I'd rather, although a lot of Sinclair fans have contacted me about the Gamercard, and obviously that's part of my audience. I'd rather do my own thing, and although I do similar things to Clive, I do my own. I've got my own bike and my own console, and I'd rather do my own thing,
and innovate,
and create completely new things.
Yeah.
Rather than try and hook onto, okay, I'm going to do another Spectrum just for the sake of tapping into the Spectrum fan base, because a certain amount, and also the Spectrum was a big part of my childhood, and I kind of see that as a part of, big part of my childhood and my, it's part of me really, because I knew when I did that thing at the Fate, and I did that game and saw all this money changing hands and people buzzing about just a little game we created in 20 minutes in the rain. That was a powerful thing. I'll tell you a story actually. So when I was telling you about the joystick thing, when I was in the Sinclair Labs, I was sworn to secrecy. And when I went home, and we were sitting around the dining room table, and my dad says, "Oh, I've got this new product I'm working on. You can't tell anyone about it whatsoever. Absolutely swear to secrecy, Grant." And I was like, yeah, lips are sealed. And he said, "I've just been asked to design a joystick interface for the Spectrum for Science." And the Science who made the organisers. Because Science used to do a lot of the early software for the ZX81, Spectrum, the Acorn. And they had got this, their idea was to do a cartridge-based interface. So they've got a joystick interface that takes cartridges. And I know this was like an 82 because Science sent the Spectrum to my dad. They're that rare. I mean, I got one, but I wasn't going to let that out of my hands for anything. But Science had sent the Spectrum to my dad, but it was just the top half. It wasn't their hardware. So they're like, okay, yeah, this is what you've got to work with. And they just gave him the top. And I remember my dad doing the design and everything, and it was a cartridge-based Spectrum, and that could have really taken off. But Sinclair did it later in about #84. They did a cartridge-based Interface 2,
That's right. Yeah.
which was the production version of the prototype I'd seen earlier.
Okay.
And
Interesting.
that guy who was like a teenager or whatever demoing that prototype to me is now the like director of NVIDIA.
Wow.
Yeah, he's the director of NVIDIA.
Wow. It's amazing where people have come from in the industry and just how many people are linked to your family name. I mean, as for instance, you mentioned, I know it's not directly linked to Sinclair, but where Alan Sugar was working the markets and things, one of my family members would have stalls next to him.
Really?
Back in the, yeah.
Wow.
And the stories he tells about that era and how going from the markets into the shops and then seeing how cassette games become part of his store and the machines that were coming in, and he would be sent prototypes for demoing things prior to them being released. And you think, why was I 3 years old at that time? You know, so
Yeah.
a phenomenal time. But so what's the future like for you? I mean, obviously you've got the knack, you've got the ideas. The handheld device is something we're really excited about reviewing, and can't wait to show it off to our listeners. But beyond that, beyond the next stage of the device, I know you're already looking at that, but what else excites you? What technology is coming through that you think, wow, that's something I want to get my hands on and maybe do something with?
Well, the way a lot of the computer hardware seems to be going, and it's, I mean, a lot of it's come out of the sort of success of the Arduino and the lower cost Raspberry Pi boards. So the microcontroller, the microcontrollers, a lot of people are doing stuff with, especially in the DIY market. But we were using little microcontrollers in various products over the years. In the late '90s, my dad designed a torch, so it's shaped like a pedal, but it had like computer controls, so you could make it strobe, or you could make it, go red, or and that hadn't been done before, and that was my first experience with microcontroller, and they're really not very powerful then. But what I'm seeing happening with microcontrollers now is they're getting so much faster, and the cost is lower cost, and they've just got so much more benefits over. And I think there's a lot of hardware is really over-engineered personally. And I think I learned that from Clive really, because he if you look at the ZX81 internals, just 4 chips, and he did that. He was the first person in the world to do a computer under 49 quid or 49 quid, and it had 4 chips, and that had never been done. And then when he did the first flat screen TV, he managed to get all the main circuitry, everything on one custom chip. And whereas Sony had a rival flat screen TV, and theirs had all sorts of components all over the place, and was much higher cost as a result. And so I learned so much from Clive about just keeping it back to basics and stripped down. And so I like looking. I take that to design. Not always. I mean, I've been working on some products with a much more powerful Snapdragon processor in, but they're much more resource heavy, and the future seems to be going microcontroller as far as I can see.
I think recently you've had one of the former bosses of Sony said that in terms of gaming, everybody seems to be trying to get an extra frame per second out and an extra bit of lighting, whereas the successful things are the retro handhelds are the. I mean, I know it still is a very high-powered thing for its size, but things like the Steam Deck, where people aren't bothered about the highest power, they're wanting things to work well, they're wanting things to work easily, but then those that want to tinker, whether it's somebody who knows programming or whether it's somebody who knows how to follow a YouTube video like me, that's what's been successful at the moment. The Steam Deck has been a runaway success because it's both a console, it's a handheld, so people can use it wherever they want. They can go to the toilet and play Hades or whatever, or they can use it as a full computer and do programming on it and use it as part of a bigger process.
Do you guys use that Steam Deck?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've both got Steam Decks.
Yeah.
Absolutely love mine. I've physically done some basic modding with mine. I've just upgraded the hard drive and the back plate. I wasn't daring enough to mod the front, because you have to remove the screen and everything. And I was like, no, I'm not doing that. But no, I'm very much the tinkerer out of the group. But I don't know any programming. The last programming I did was on the 48K.
Right.
Since then, I haven't done it. But I had a Spectrum because my mum and dad were very anti-gaming. And obviously that was a computer, so that wasn't for gaming. So I proceeded to own it for about 12 years and gamed on it. Eventually, it was a family computer, and then eventually it was given to me in my bedroom. And I think when I eventually got rid of it, I had 2 bin bags full of tapes.
Right.
Brilliant.
But yeah,
I had an Amstrad, so yeah.
Nobody's perfect, Tom.
I know, but as a retro collector, as an adult, I owned everything. So once you start collecting, it's endless. But my aim was to get a complete Spectrum and Amstrad collection, which is near on impossible.
Have you got the emailer?
I
the
do.
Amstrad emailer. You got one?
I do.
Oh,
I used to sell them.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Wow.
And until I sold one to my sister, who proceeded to tell me she kept on getting pornography adverts on the screen.
That's great.
I was like, I'm so sorry.
Yeah. Was it your old one? Was it, Tom? Yeah.
No, definitely not. I was only young, so I was watching Dixon's at the time. So yeah. Oh, good memories.
Bless.
That was. God, I forgot about that one. So yeah.
It's interesting. When you talk about people who used to work at Sinclair, one of the guys who did a lot of stuff with the sort of Spectrum accessories was a guy called Martin. I think it's called Martin Brennan. Who's got hi-fi now, but he sells a little hi-fi unit that's been very successful. But I know he went from Sinclair. Sinclair were developing a sort of super Spectrum, which is a super powerful Spectrum, but it just got axed. And I think it was his product, and the Super Spectrum was sort of part of what became, from what I understand, one of the Atari gaming consoles. When Sinclair shut down, he went and worked. I think they tried to do the Super Spectrum on their own or something else, broke away, and then he went to Atari, and I think a lot of what was in that ended up being in the Atari. I don't know that for a fact. I just sort of read bits.
The Atari Panther and Jaguar.
Yeah.
Because the Panther was going to be the sequel to the Jaguar,
right?
But it ended up not happening due to various issues going on in the brand at the time. But it was interesting actually, because I actually owned one of the Atari Jaguar VR headsets, one of the only working units, and it was phenomenal. The tech inside the Jaguar and that, and obviously they promoted it as a 64-bit machine.
Did you take it apart?
I did take it apart because my dad bought me a second-hand one from Game Station back in the day, and it basically had smoke coming out the back of it. I dismantled that one, but I also dismantled the VR headset and had a look inside very, very carefully. Lots of ribbons to destroy, and phenomenal kit. And I mean, it was a 32-bit machine, not a 64-bit machine. They were very clever with their marketing, but the thought behind it was, again, it was basic but clever choice of the chips and the structure behind it. And it's interesting to think that came really from the ideas for a super Spectrum.
Yeah, well, that was a connection. I actually got emailed by the founder Atari the other day. We'd had some. He talking about the Gamercard. Said it was a great invention. I was pretty pleased, because originally I'd taken an early prototype. It wasn't gift card shape, but it was a different format. I took that to see. I planned to take it to see Sir Clive, and me and my dad had arranged to go down to see Clive, and that was. And my dad phoned up and said, "Oh, Clive's just died,"
Yeah, correct.
and so that was pretty tough. But to get some feedback from someone like the founder of Atari was pretty amazing.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting how a big loss, obviously, losing Clive, and for everyone who's looks back at those times with, a soft heart, for things like that. But it now is quite interesting because things like the micro or the mini computing machines, like the mini Super Nintendos, the mini Ataris, things like that. So these things are evolving back again, and I think people are getting sick of the inflated games that are out now with the multi-million-pound budgets and £70 for a game and things like that. I think people are evolving back to the micro games, the things that you can pick up for a few pounds and play for hours. And I know that one of the things that's just recently been done is the Amstrad name has been sold or has been given to Alan Sugar's grandson.
Oh, really?
Or son, I think it is, one or the other. And he has just done a virtual museum about the Amstrad brand, and they're exploring other ways in which they can bring the Amstrad brand back to market. So it's interesting how those things, such as Commodore being bought recently, and they're looking at bringing things out. It's all going full circle, and that's nice. I like that.
If you look at it nowadays, people sometimes go, "Oh, there's nothing that excites me." It's like, well, you've got probably 50 years nearly of video games. There's a lot to look back on, and people are only just realizing that, because when we were, us guys aren't that far apart in age. When we were sort of when we were in our 20s, the things that from 10 years ago were still, we knew them. But now that they're retro, we look back and we go, "Oh, Joe, actually, I want to play that." And that's the thing. When we were younger, gamers were, people thought we were all in mom's basement sitting at a computer. But now that I'm a grown adult. Well, I'm an adult anyway.
Occasionally,
sometimes I'm not mature adult, but we get the kids. We don't look at the kids and go, "Oh, yeah, video games." We look at the kids and go, "Yay, gaming!" There are thousands of games from each generation. It's I think from Spectrum to Sega and Nintendo to Sony's Start and all that kind of thing. There are so many games to look back, and that's what things like the Gamercard help. High quality ones are few and far between. I mean, I myself have an Ambernick RG35XX-H, the horizontal one.
Yeah.
And although that's better than the $299 one, I think got off one of those Chinese websites that I got for my son, that did have about 1,000 games that were all Super Mario Brothers in various forms. They're still, if you look at when you're buying an Ambernick, generally the idea is throw away the SD card because it's useless. Don't knock it too much because the screen will disconnect. Good luck after a year because the battery will probably be pretty much non-existent. And that's why the higher quality ones, I will always advise people to pay that a little bit extra and go for the higher quality retro consoles.
It was interesting you talking about peeking inside VR headsets and stuff, because I used to do a lot of that. Because my dad would go to Hong Kong, and because his client he used to be designing for was out there, and he would bring back all these sort of he brought back a really early Game & Watch, which was because in like Nintendo and Sony and Seiko and Casio used to test market their stuff in Hong Kong to see whether it was successful before they launch it in other markets. If it wasn't, they would just often just forget it. And one of the products my dad brought back was a little Game & Watch, or a couple of Game & Watches, and they weren't even branded as Nintendo, because Nintendo didn't want to, because they were doing cards at the time.
That's right.
And didn't, and I'm not sure I must have looked inside that, but some of the things I took apart and maybe shouldn't have done and put back together. Sort of talking calculators and all sorts of crazy things.
I used to do that when my mum and dad would always have to tell me whenever we got any gadget, whether it was a TV remote, a game or anything, they'd always be like, don't take it apart. Because I would love taking things apart, but putting them back together was not really what I was good at 7 years old.
Same. I'm the same, yeah.
I've just been tinkering with I got a guy to 3D print a replica of I suppose it would be the Sinclair or the Amstrad with the tape deck, but in mini form. And there's a retro virtual arcade emulator that has a moving tape deck. So we got a mini screen and fitted it where the tape deck would be.
Oh, right, cool.
So it looks like a virtual tape deck's loading while you're loading the ROMs. And again, it's got a RetroPie in it and stuff. And it was interesting because we were like, oh, I wonder what we could do with this, just playing around and have one in the lounge because it looked cool. So he's working on it at the moment, but it's my own little toy.
Sounds cool. Yeah.
But that's the kind of thing I think that Grant was saying about is that it's not about necessarily having the high powered thing or anything. It's having a good idea and eventually working out a way how you can do that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And you've thought of something that you can do with the tape deck, the screen tape deck, and so that could be it. Oh, there you go. Maybe it could be the next retro console thing.
I'm too lazy for that.
Is that a home console?
I'm too lazy, so definitely not. It's my own personal project.
Is this your put it out to Grant? Yeah.
Yeah, Grant.
Share the idea with you.
So, are you guys? Do you do this in the day, or is it what do you do this for a living, or do you do this as a side?
No, this is a side. This is a side. I work. You can see on video who I work for, but I won't say. But it says what I am at the bottom. I basically drive.
Yeah.
And teach people to drive.
Oh, I see. Right. No.
So
and I'm a retro collector, but I work in housing as well. So it's
right.
Yeah, but I won't name the firm because they won't appreciate that. But our podcast is we've been very lucky. It's obviously we're over 100 episodes now, and it's grown really well. And Duncan's part of the Gaming Dads forum, which allows us to feedback to users and moderate and and get some feedback from people when we're asking questions and things. So it's lots of very
the future's bright, as we say.
Yeah, that's it. So to leave with one final question.
Okay.
If you could be remembered, if there was a legacy product that you would want yourself and your family name to be remembered for, what would it be?
Myself and my family name.
Yeah. Well, no, I think we'll go for Grant, because obviously the Sinclair name.
Yeah. I think you're leading that name now, aren't
Grant Sinclair.
Your own way. You're leading that name now, so you.
Well, from the family, I think the Spectrum's got to be the biggest one, because it had the most impact probably.
Mm.
Calculators are close, but I think that for me, the Iris the eTrike, which when I showed it on TV, that just exploded. People got so excited when they saw that, and never seen anything like that. Wasn't prepared for it at all, and so that's what I want to do. I mean, I obviously love designing computers, and not just computers. I'm into all sorts of other products as well. But I'd like to be remembered, I think, from the work I've done so far, probably for the Iris, because I think nobody had seen anything like it when it came out, because it was quite sort of, when I first showed off the concept, it was quite, people thought people would, they actually use the word futuristic, and pretty much anyone who, and so it got people really excited, and I knew, I knew that was the first sort of major one I did. So
we need a test drive, Grant. We need a test drive.
Well, all the people I work with, so whether they write about the products or whatever, we're having a big launch in London. So
Oh, wow.
I'll invite you guys along. Yeah.
That'd be
Excellent.
awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah,
That'd be
definitely.
awesome. Yeah.
And we're very much
We're
looking
both in the
forward to it.
southeast.
We are, yeah, and we're very much looking forward to reviewing the card, and we'll get
Yeah,
a
looks
review
fantastic.
out. Yeah,
And if anybody wants to know anything about it already, then go to grantsinclair.com. That's all one word. And it's got the Irish eTrike and the Gamercard with all the tech specs. And yeah, buy it now.
absolutely,
On there.
yeah. Grant, thank you so much for joining us for today's episode. You've been phenomenal, and we really appreciate you answering all our questions from days of past and today as well. So, and again, we look forward to reviewing the product and hope to catch up with you again in the future for more releases.
Definitely.
And the
Really
test
good
drive.
really good to talk to you both.
Yeah,
Thank
thank you
very
so much.
Grant Sinclair.
Thank you.
Yeah, and on that note, bye.